Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. I work with people to help them step into effective leadership and realize their professional and personal goals. If you have known failure and success, if you have had good bosses and bad bosses, if you are a high achiever and want new ideas, and if you want the practical and tactical side of things, then you are in the right place. This show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. We are joined by guest Miles Thurman. And Miles, you are a chief of staff at SparkCognition, and your principal is not the CEO, it is the CTO. So we will talk all about that, but welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, just to level set us, what does SparkCognition do and kind of what's the setup internally?
Yeah, so SparkCognition is a company that was formed with AI in mind. So everything we build has got our thought process is AI first. So our products and our services, and mainly our product focus now is around AI products. So we focus mainly on the industrial space, mainly around health and safety, predictive maintenance, and computer vision.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it must be tough for you because no one's talking about AI these days. So kind of
definitely the new buzzword, right? AI. We've been around for about 10 years, so we were a little bit ahead of the buzzword.
Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely out there and things are definitely roaring in the AI space.
Very cool. So you're the COS to the CTO, and no other executive has a chief of staff, which is a bit unusual. So I was just wondering, what's the background of that setup?
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, I am the only chief of staff. Really, the way it came about is I was working with a bunch of customers helping deploy our products, and the CTO kind of gelled with me and felt that I could have an opportunity to help run his organization, the technology organization. And really, at that time, it was and still is the biggest organization in the company. So it was kind of like running a whole like mini company within itself. So we had a lot of different developers in different locations. We had a lot of different initiatives, a lot of different products. And really the goal was to bring someone on to help kind of streamline all of that process, as well as kind of help pick and choose what areas of growth, what areas, which developers, what locations, and kind of just better kind of streamline the overall organization. So not only our products, but also the organization. And then there's some obvious like operational stuff, like day-to-day stuff, like making sure the budget's on track, making sure that all the invoices are paid and that they're the correct invoices, things like that, that he wanted to focus more on the bigger picture on the technology and kind of offload some of that.
Okay, great. And then you still work with all the other executives in a similar way as other chiefs of staff, but yet your primary focus is on the technology front.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because you mentioned that there's only one chief of staff under the CTO, but really I kind of get distributed across all the C-suite right now.
Okay.
I don't know if that was by design or if just kind of the nature of the beast. Like, for example, I kind of help I was helping with the FP&A function for the CAO, CFO. I helped the chief revenue officer with his sales planning templates and things like that. So it kind of goes across the board. And what I've learned is it really just all the C-suite really have to be aligned. And kind of what I stepped into wasn't really part of the job description up front, but you have to make sure that all those C-suites are on the same page. Otherwise, you've got sales going one way and the boat going another way. So it makes it my job easier when all the C-suite is aligned.
Are you saying that the actual chief of staff job was not like the job description? That never happened.
You've probably heard this quite a bit. I mean, the chief in I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and kind of one of the themes is it's still a somewhat new kind of role in just corporate America in general, right? I mean, you hear about chief of staff and you think of like the West Wing,
Yep.
Or something like that. So I think this role itself is still trying to figure itself out in the market. But I have been seeing a lot more of this role out there because I think it really is kind of like that Swiss Army knife person who can jump into not only building products, not only understanding financials, but it's also kind of prepping that person to be that next leader in the future as well.
Right, for sure. And yeah, I think that you are talking about being spread across the executive team. And that happens to a certain extent in all instances of chief of staff. But you and I were talking earlier, and you said, part of my job is to make sure that my principal isn't surprised, or that executives aren't surprised or blindsided by something.
Yeah. So the way I framed the position, or one of my core kind of competencies or tenets when I took the role, was that if Sridhar, who is the chief technology officer at SparkCognition, if he is surprised by something that is going to affect his organization or something that is big within the organization, that means I probably wasn't doing my job, or I had failed to have my ear to the ground and kind of understand the operational insights within the organization. Because I never want to go to a meeting or have him go to a meeting, whether it's the board meeting or an executive meeting, not knowing kind of all the ins and outs of everything that's going on over the past week. So if there is something that surprises him, whether it's like a figure, a number, a new product or service, or something that does not align with what he was thinking, in my opinion, I would feel as a bit of a failure, just because my goal is to make sure he has all the information needed to make the right decisions for the future landscape, right?
Yeah. So it sounds like, you're informing them and also just teeing them up and putting them in best position to show up well, to lead, to make their decisions, and all of those types of things.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've learned in this role, I would be curious to hear what other chiefs of staff have found, but he also uses me as sounding board quite a bit, and he expects me to push back on certain things or to kind of poke holes in his strategy, so that when he does go into the executive committee or the board members, he's already been grilled by, in a safe environment. And sometimes I even agree with them, but I'll still take the other position, or I'll still think about it in a different way. And I think that just kind of helps. We're actually very different. My principal and or Sridhar and myself. He is a very big thinker. He thinks, 10 years down the road, whereas I come from more of a delivery operational background, where I'm thinking, well, I've got these 5 immediate steps that I need to do before I can even think about thinking about 10 years down the road, right? So I think that's kind of where we mesh well, where it's like I try to simplify things to get things done, whereas he's thinking about the next big thing.
And you need both. So it's complementary skill set. You need both to run a business well. And it's so funny you mentioned that, because one of the things I did was, for board meetings, I would have a dry run with the executive team, and then I would pretend to be the board and ask questions. So I do that in a group setting, but also individually, because some people would get quite nervous for these meetings. And so having that round of questions or putting those reps in beforehand help them feel much more comfortable. And I think with your principal, it's a sign of confidence and strong leadership that he's like, Miles, grill me, like ask me the hard questions.
Yeah. It's definitely one of my favorite parts of the job, right? Because it's pretty rare to be able to have that access and do that. And he helps me think about things differently as well when I do that. But it's similar, like you said, the board meetings. A lot of times when you do M&A too, you have the red group that go in and try to. This is why we can't purchase this company. You've got to sell it to me internally. So it's kind of that same framework. But totally understand that. But we do the board mock runs as well. It's definitely, depending on your board, it can be a nerve-wracking experience going in there, especially if you're a newer executive too.
Yes. So for chiefs of staff listening, I would certainly recommend doing at least a dry run, or if someone would be better served to have a little mock Q&A to provide that. And then I love what you said, Miles, about the red team or the red group. You should just have that baked into your process somewhere for product launches, for decisions, for M&A, for all these different types of things, because people kind of get on board with something and the momentum takes them away, and they forget to consider all these different points about something. So that's a great piece of advice as well. When you first got into the role, you kind of talked about the notion of shrinking to grow. So I was wondering if you could talk about that whole mentality or approach.
Yeah. So when we first got into the group, we were really, and I hinted at it earlier, we were really services driven. People would come to us and we would build them this cool AI tool. They would deploy it internally for their organization. What we're trying to do is kind of shift the focus, steer the boat into more of a product function and product focus. We talked about how difficult this is because the services and product functions, if your core competencies are totally different, right? So that was kind of the first foray of what we were trying to do initially. And it's been I would say it's been a difficult task and a struggle a little bit because, like I was saying, there's different skill sets, different mindsets around product and services. But overall, it's just making sure that, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, aligning the different groups. So you got to align at the top level, but you also have to align it and make sure, in the middle level, because if you don't have those foot soldiers and kind of like middle management following the same path, what we were seeing is, we would have one path going one way and one path going another way. What that did, going back to the strength to grow, at some points we were building like totally different products. And one team was building one product, one team was building another product, and we're like, whoa, guys! All of a sudden, we have 30. This isn't true, but let's just say we had about 30 products, right? And really, it's really hard to penetrate a market when you have. And we're not like a massive company like IBM. We're not a massive company like Google. We've been in the business for 10 years. We're like a growth company, but we still need to stay focused. So we came in and said, look, let's go pick out which products and which products are going to be our core, and let's focus on those. So that was really kind of the first foray. My first kind of task was to go and do an analysis of which products we should focus on, and then bring and help help the leadership team decide which products to focus on going forward. So that way we were going to shrink. When I say shrink, we're going to shrink the product set to grow into those specific verticals.
Okay, so there's a lot you said there, and I think that you built consensus amongst the leadership team, and that's a huge lift as it is. But then you also have to follow that up with, let's communicate this plan and our high value activities to our middle management and to our rank and file folks. Because that's all well and great if you've made a decision up here, but if no one knows about it, then they're going to be running in circles in other parts of the business. And then when you were talking about taking it from 30 to 4 things, I got this flash of it's like a light. So if you turn on a lamp in a room, it diffuses the light and spreads it out. Whereas if you hone that light, the same amount of light together, it's a laser beam and it's laser focused on something. So that's the image I got when you were talking about that.
No, that's a great analogy. And that laser beam is much more powerful, right?
Goes further, faster. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. One of the things that we have commiserated on or agreed on is sometimes sales, shocker, sells things that maybe we don't technically have. So I love sales team and I love salespeople, and with all that out there, what are your thoughts on that? Have you ever experienced that?
Yes, I have. We also talked earlier too about how I was on the delivery side. I was an engagement manager, like being a project manager. So sometimes you'll get this project or this SOW and you'll say, what is this? I haven't seen this before. And it happens more like in kind of the mid-market or startups, right? Because sometimes you have to do that a little bit, especially if you're a startup. I mean, you use your customers to kind of help build the idea for the product. So in some cases, we were like in a mixture of both of those because we were in a kind of a growth phase. And so we still kind of had the startup mentality. It's like, hey, we'll just go build this product. But that didn't align with kind of the shrink because we already had these products. We wanted to focus on these products. Mm-hmm. And then the sales team kind of would still go out and sell maybe something new that we really haven't developed yet. And then that takes away our product developers on the product side to go do services work. And that's not aligned with our new strategy, right? So yeah, it happens, and the sellers, I think what you have to do in that instance is really just make sure the incentives are aligned. Like and we talked about this, right? Making sure that the commissions is based on product revenue or ARR, annual recurring revenue, right? Things like that. Maybe not so much commissions or less commissions on POCs or pilots. So it's things like that where you have to align the incentives to make sure that they're selling what's on the truck of what we have today. Now, that's not to say this is where you got to be careful because you also don't want the sellers to be handcuffed.
Right.
So you do have on a product side, and what we need to do better just as an organization currently is have better product roadmaps and have a better understanding of where we're going with the product. So that seller can sell something that's not quite built yet, but they know 6 months down the road, it will be built, right? Or we'll have some sort of prototype around it. That helps the seller because they can sell. It's easier to sell these future things than it is to say, oh, look, this is what we have today. What else you got? Kind of thing.
I love that. And I think one of the things that chief of staff can do is help the founder or leadership decide what's our philosophy here. So in startup stages, you might say yes to more, or you might be very deliberate about saying, we're going to stay in this lane and we're going to run hard and specialize in this lane. And that's both are valid approaches, but you have to know what it is and communicate that to the team. So to your point, we had something where, look, we told our sales folks, 90% of what you sell should be off the shelf stuff or existing products of what we have. We expect that 10% are going to be custom deals. And we want you to be looking for that kind of stuff too, and listening to clients about what their needs are. And so come to us, like scope it out and do all the things you need to do. But we understand that some of them are going to be the exception. Now, if like 80% of your deals come through, like you mentioned, the delivery team goes, what is this product name? This is a random collection of words. How do we deliver on this? Then that's a different conversation. But yes.
It's a great point you bring up, though, because what you're kind of describing is you still want to have that signal to the market to figure out what to build in the future, right? So that 10% is very valuable that you were describing. I totally agree with that.
And I will give props to our sales team. So one time, a whole bunch of salespeople kept hearing this same thing. And so they took one of our products and they kind of made it different. And at first we were like, whoa, this isn't our product. But enough of our customers were saying that and asking for that. We were like, okay, we need to listen and adapt. And so we actually on the fly built this kind of product plus type thing to meet our customers' needs. And had our sales folks not brought that information, we would have lost a huge opportunity. So you have to leave room for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example of working as like a cohesive team and understanding kind of the end goal here is to build the best product for the customer, right? So that's going to help the seller sell more, and that's going to help the product delivery, our product management team build a better product.
And I think, you mentioned focus, where we need to provide focus in strategy and also communication and what salespeople are selling. And we mentioned commissions. We have talked about this before, but as a chief of staff, sometimes you have influence on that. And you can say, hey, if we want to incentivize this product launch, maybe for the first 90 days of the launch, we double their commission. So they are like laser focused on that stuff.
And you had told me that you had actually done something similar like that before.
Did.
It was very, very successful. It's not something that we've done, but actually, when we were talking about a month ago, I was like, that's a really good idea. So I should bring that to my leadership team as well.
If you want a salesperson's attention, you say, would you like to double your commission? And they will give you their undivided attention. On the flip side, if you are having problems with people selling things you don't have over and over again, and it's causing problems with the customer, right? Because if they're sold something and we can't deliver, you put delivery teams in a bad spot, but you have an unhappy customer. We had certain cases where we would claw back their commission. So if you have sold something so badly that we just don't have it and someone's pissed, then we would claw back their commission. That also got their attention. So there's different ways to build this, but salespeople are absolutely on our team as well. And we would always say, we want you to be wildly successful. We want you to be hitting, 110% of your quota, and we will reward you at 110%. You have no cap on your commission. But streamlining.
One of the best expenses you can, when I look at the budget every year, when I put the AOP together this year, is one of the best expenses we could have is commissions. That means we're selling a lot of stuff. So I'm okay with the commission expense as long as they're selling the right things, right?
Yes, I want every salesperson to be doing amazingly well for themselves and for the team. But that kind of leads us into the whole world of a product rollout process. And so I know you've been instrumental in standing up that process or revamping that process for your team. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was somewhat new to it because, like I mentioned a couple of times, I was on the delivery side, so I would take the product and go figure out how to make it work in a customer's environment. But what I found out when I moved over to this role, I could see a lot more of the horizon. I could see the whole company as opposed to my little delivery section. So what I realized, and actually what Sridhar calls it at our org, is the product with the capital P, meaning that it's not just what you build, it's not just the technology, but it's also making sure everything's aligned on the product marketing, right? Do we have all the collateral that we need? Do we have the ability to have the customer sign up? Is support aligned? Is Do we have the sellers aligned, right? Are we selling the right stuff? Are we selling it at the right time? Are we going to the right conferences? All of this stuff. Do we have the right hardware? That's all of this stuff is what he would call a product with a capital P, in that it's not just the technology, it's the overall experience that the customer would go through. So that makes it more of a product. And the better you can make it more seamless to the customer, it just seems like a nicer, shinier object. No matter if it's technology or a new car, everything is aligned. And it just seems like these people know what they're doing. They hit the market correctly. They know their product. They know the organization. And it even goes down to like making sure you're in the right associations, making sure you speak the language of the market, right? All of this stuff comes into play when it comes to going to, especially to a new market, because that's really where I focus, like new markets. So bringing products to new markets, all of this stuff has to be aligned. You have to understand all the different components into how you roll out a product. And it's not just the product, but it's also the different organizations, the people, the collateral, all this stuff. And that was something I was new to in this role. I really hadn't been involved with that. I would take a lot of that collateral just kind of as like, oh yeah, of course we have this. Of course we have this beautiful thing that's going to make my life easier. I'd never been on the other side. It's like all of those things someone had to do, right? Someone had to put together.
Yeah. And it's so funny because a lot of companies miss what you were talking about. They miss the whole identifying what is the market segment we're going after and where do they live, so to speak, like what associations or what online forums or whatever. And then what is their pain point? So how do we solve that? And I think another thing you said is make it clear. So I heard clarity, make this process smooth, but don't make the customer think in a certain way. Just make that lead them to what you want them to get to. So I think that's
and
key point
customers
too.
can be different, right? Because one of the things that, and when I say customers can be different, there's different personas, right? So
Sure.
there's the end customer that we do sell directly to, but some of the times what we try to do now in our new strategy is go to channels and partners. So if you really have to be clear with the partner, you have, to your point, the clarity is very, very important because they want to take it and go. They don't want to sit there and learn a bunch of stuff. They want to take it and go make their money and share the revenue with you. They don't have time to sit and learn a whole new product in a very complicated process. They need it. They need it packaged up and ready to go.
Yeah, totally. And we had people who like white label or we would be powered by or all those different combinations. But I think in all this too, I always recommend if a chief of staff asks me, hey, Emily, I have these 12 things that I could be working on. The CEO doesn't really know, or my principal doesn't really know, like which initiative would you recommend? I always say product launches or sales operations because they touch so many different areas of the business. And so if you're launching a product, you do have to identify the market segment, identify the marketing message, work with sales operations to get the products into Salesforce so salespeople can pull them. You're working with finance because it's financing, delivery.
Forms, all this stuff that, I totally agree. The sales ops are the one, like they're like the kind of the heartbeat of what's going on in the organization, and they're fueling everything. That was something I was not privy to either. This before was like understanding, where these order forms or contracts or SOWs came from. I had written some SOWs, obviously on the delivery side, but never have I built a template that everybody would need to use, right? So it's a great point. I mean, sales ops and product launches, they have to be, together, and it's really in the technology world, that is the business, right?
Yes. And speaking of initiatives, so I always like to know what chiefs of staff are working on because you will get wildly different answers. So is there some things you can share about, like what are some top priorities or top initiatives that you tend to gravitate toward or be involved in?
Yeah. So when I first came over, it was mainly the first part I'd said about making sure, understanding what everybody was doing and which products were the successful ones, and making sure that we're sticking to the ones. That was like the first initiative that I had. But ongoing, it's just making sure the costs are maintained too across the board in the organization. That's something I built out some dashboards with Workday and things like that we didn't really have visibility as an org. We had it for the board and everything, but not like as a technology org, like where are our expenses going, organizing all that. So once I kind of got that process solidified, then I focused on what we were talking about now, new markets. So we have our products today, but maybe we can tailor it to a new market. Let's test the waters. Let's see if there actually is something here. Let's put a little fishing line out there and see if something grabs. And if it does, then go to that big capital P product launch, that process, right? And then one of the other things it's something new that we're really trying to focus on is the channel partners. So we didn't really have a channel partners system. When you have services, a lot of times you actually just go direct and build. So with the product, there's so many different ways to get your product out there. So one of our newest initiatives is to really focus on channel partners, whether they're SIs or OEMs or things like that, that could help us drive some of these markets. Because a lot of times they know the market better than we do. They've been doing it for a long time. They've been in that market. So it's not only a way to launch your product, but it's also a way to learn the market.
And you might as well leverage their connections and their knowledge. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. It sounds like you have a lot of leeway in your role. So is this something where you're coming up with, hey, what if we looked at channel partners and focused on that? Or, hey, I want to do some market research in this area because I think there might be something there. I'm going to cast my fishing line over there. Is that how it works?
Kind of. I mean, there were some things that we just had to do, right?
Okay.
And Sridhar was like, hey, I need help with these things. But my principal, or Sridhar, the CTO, he's very collegial. He's kind of very like, kind of like a university professor. I see him as sometimes where he's like, hey, give me some ideas. What are you thinking about? What do you want to do? Even though he has his own idea, it's just the way that I think he does it to help me think through some of these things. And it kind of helps me better understand where I want to do, what I want to do. But he's always asking me, what do you want to do next? What do you think? I know you've got these initiatives that I need you to do, but what do you want to do? And he's kind of setting me up maybe in the next year or so, or whether it's at this company or a future company, to be that next leader. And that's why I think he's doing it, because he wants me to think through these big ideas. As I mentioned before, I'm so focused on some of the smaller things that he wants me to think bigger. So to your point earlier, to answer your question directly, I do get to direct some of my initiatives. Like one of the new business go-to-market is something I'm very interested in. And I told him, I was like, I want to keep doing this. I want to, it seems like all of my skills align in this subset.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you have a great relationship with your principal, and he's investing time and energy into you and giving you encouragement. And, it sounds like you've talked to him openly about this. So do you have any inclination of what you would want to do after this chief of staff role? Or is he saying, Miles, I really see this area of strength for you, so I would at least consider that?
Yeah, he wants me to go. It seems like he wouldn't come out and say this, but he seems like he wants me to go down the product path and like become like a senior product manager or something along those lines. I just feel, and I told him, I feel like I might be better suited in like some sort of business development role or some sort of channel partners role, just because I feel like I communicate well with customers. Having 10 years of delivery experience, I know how to speak to the customers, understand kind of the caveats and everything like that. And I don't know, I feel like maybe a leadership role in that aspect, kind of building new businesses, seems like might be better. But he seems to see something where it comes to the product management. But that could be just because I've had to fill in some news every once in a while.
That's awesome. Yeah, he might have his own bias there too, a technology background, but that's great. That's awesome that he's doing that. And it's so good to hear when principals or any leader is investing in their people and really seeing their potential and sharing that with them. So that's fantastic. If a new chief of staff is listening, or maybe an aspiring one, is there any words of wisdom or advice that you would give? Maybe something that you wished you had known when you first started the role?
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of things I wish I would have known when I started the role, but to me, it's just being willing and able to have that open conversation with the principal, whether it's the CEO or whoever it is in the C-suite, and just lay the groundwork. It was like, look, I know I report to you, but I kind of want to see this as more of a peer relationship, so that we can make sure we bounce ideas off each other, and I can be that person that you can lean on in certain situations. I would also make sure that one thing I should have done better was have a really focus on making a better relationship across the board on the C-suite, even if they have their own chiefs of staff. It's good to just understand how people work. As anybody that's been in the corporate world all the time,
yes,
know people work differently. So if you can understand how each individual C-suite person, how him or her worked, and that just makes your life so much easier, especially if you need numbers. Let's say you need numbers from the CFO, or if you need sales data from the CRO or sales leader. It's just going to make your life a lot easier if you can understand how they work, and build those relationships too. So don't neglect those in spite of your principal.
Great stuff. Great advice. Thank you. Miles, thank you so much. This has been a fun conversation, and it's gone in different directions than some of our other episodes, which I think is good to give people exposure to other aspects of the role. So thank you very much once again for being on the show. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Thanks for having me.
If you're not interested in gaining valuable knowledge and becoming a better leader, then by all means, don't subscribe. But if you're keen on becoming a highly knowledgeable, more successful and confident leader, then hit that subscribe button.